Well, I do see that we have quorum now. So good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Built Heritage Subcommittee meeting of August 23rd, 2022. I'd like to call the members to order. Before we begin our proceedings, I'd like to acknowledge that Ottawa is built on unceded Algonquin Anishinaabe territory. The peoples of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this place. The City of Ottawa honors the people and the land of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. The City of Ottawa also recognizes and respects the diversity and contributions that all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people bring to our city. Members are reminded to submit any motions, visual supports, or declarations of interest in writing to the coordinator at their earliest opportunity. Although the deadlines have passed for residents to register to speak and provide written submissions to this subcommittee, residents may still make submissions to Planning Committee and Council. If you have any technical difficulties signing into the meeting, you can contact the committee coordinator by calling 613-580-2424, extension 22953. A reminder that if participants have technical issues with their Zoom connection, they may call in using the backup telephone number provided by the coordinator. I have received regrets from Vice Chair Quinn. Could the committee coordinator please call the roll? A reminder to members to unmute themselves when they're called.
Member Halsell.
Here.
Member Podolsky.
Here.
Councillor Gower.
Here.
Councillor McKenney.
Here.
Member Conforti.
Here.
Councillor Brockington. Councillor Moffat. Vice Chair Quinn. Chair King.
Here.
You have quorum, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest?
Yes, Chair King.
I see Member Podolsky has raised his hand.
I'm a member of this committee, but I'm also a practicing architect and heritage consultant. Therefore, there are three items that I wish to declare interest at this meeting. The first is 3537 William Street, where I was the architect that developed the concept for the reconstruction of this property after the fire. And so I'd like to declare interest for that. The second one is item 4.3, 197-201 Wilbrod, where I'm the architect for the infill development that is going to be before Built Heritage Subcommittee today. And thirdly, item number 4.4, 70 Nicholas, the former City Registry Office development for Cadillac Fairview. I'm the heritage consultant on that one. So I'm wanting to declare interest on that one as well. So for those three items, I will withdraw from the discussion.
Thank you so much, Barry. It's much appreciated to declare those interests, and we will take note of that during any votes. The next item before us, seeing no other declarations of interest or confirmation of the last meeting minutes. Are the minutes of Monday, June 20th, 2022 confirmed?
Confirmed.
Yes.
Thank you. Well, given the number of items on the agenda today, I have decided to proceed with a consent agenda. Our first item, 4.1, is an application for demolition and new construction at 229, 231, 241, and 245, as well as 247 Beechwood Avenue, a property designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act. That item will be held for presentation and speakers. The second item is the reissuance of the heritage permit for 3537 William Street, properties designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act, located in the Byward Market Heritage Conservation District. Now, I do see that Councillor Fleury is with us, the ward councillor, and has raised his hand. Would you like to make comment on this item?
Chair, I just have a question to staff, very simple one, if possible.
Okay, if it's quick, I'll allow it, and please pose your question.
Thank you. I believe it's Ashley. I'm just looking to understand this property is important. It's in the Byward Market. It's in the specialty district. It's designated and within the heritage conservation districts. Just curious as to going through another winter's period, and what if we have the right environment, if we have the right requirements to protect the integrity of what is remaining, which I believe to be the front facade.
Thank you, Councillor. I think that's a question we'll have to circle back with Building Code Services to ensure they have all the proper studies to ensure that this property can sustain another winter. We can maybe circle back with you afterwards, if that's appropriate.
Absolutely. Does it have an impact on the report in front of us today, or?
I don't think so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for responding to Councillor Fleury's question. We also did have some registered speakers. David Fleming from Heritage Ottawa is registered to speak. If this item carries, David, do you need to speak? And I don't know if David is with us or it's been elevated to.
You should be coming online now, Chair.
Okay.
Mr. Fleming will need to unmute himself.
I'm sorry, I thought I had. No, there's no need for me to speak. You have Heritage Ottawa's comments on this, and we support it.
Excellent, thank you. We are in receipt of those comments, and we also have Dominic Santaguida of the property owner who's also with us. If the item carries, does Dominic need to speak? And I'm supposing we're waiting for him to be elevated as well.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
I just want to comment on Matthew's question. We did perform the underpinning to secure the building, but you're welcome to check with Building Code Services. Everything was done in 2019, 2020 to ensure that the building is stabilized.
Excellent. Well, thank you for those comments, and Councillor Fleury's on the call, so he's in receipt of them. If there are no other comments from Dominic, is this item carried? Carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next item is 4.3, application to alter 197-201 Wilbrod Street. Properties designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act as part of the Sandy Hill West Heritage Conservation District. Mr. Fleming, if this item carries, do you need to speak?
No, I don't.
Okay.
As I say, we support this, and you have our comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I see that Councillor Fleury has raised his hand.
Yes, Chair, I did want to bring to your attention, there was a recent media article in Sandy Hill of the request to purchase property. And this is the same portfolio, which is Mr. Gorfe. I'm happy to see that there is a new ownership. I am happy to see the engagement of the last number of years. Obviously, Barry's declaring conflict on this matter, but it is his work. He understands Sandy Hill well and has done the work. So I know the community is looking forward to a demo. Yeah, we're also looking forward to the implementation of the plans that are in front of you today. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Appreciate those comments. Is this item carried?
Carried.
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 Thank you so much. Item 4.4, application to alter 70 Nicholas Street, a property designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. The applicant team is with us today. If the item carries, does the applicant team need to speak? And I don't know if the members of the applicant team have been elevated to participants.
Hello, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, there was quite a delay there
Sorry about that.
when I was being promoted up to a participant. No, we would not need to speak if it carries.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Fleming, once again from Heritage Ottawa, if this item carries, do you need to speak?
No, Mr. Chair, we don't. We heartily support this project.
Okay, thank you. So is this item carried?
Carried.
Carried.
Thank you. The next item is 4.5, designation of York Street Public School, 310 York Street and Glebe Collegiate Institute, 212 Glebe Avenue under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. This item will be held. There is a presentation. Item 4.6, application to alter 15 Linden Terrace, a property designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act and located in the Clemo Malklin driveway in Linden Terrace Heritage Conservation District. This item will be held for a presentation as well. 5.1 is our performa status update. The Built Heritage Subcommittee inquiries and motions for the period ending August 5th, 2022. Is this item received? Received. Thank you. So now we'll return to item 4.1 on the agenda, dealing with Beechwood Avenue. Can staff please provide an overview of this report?
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just wait for these slides to come up before I get started. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, great.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so this item relates to the properties at 229 to 247 Beechwood Avenue in the Rockwood Park Heritage Conservation District. The site includes 5 properties, as you can see on the screen. They're divided by Carsdale Avenue. The site is located in the southern tip of the HCD in an area section of the HCD known as the Panhandle. If we go to the next slide, some photos of the property. So there's 5 existing buildings. They're a mix of representative examples of buildings constructed between 1900 and 1930, and then also some mid-century representative examples of post-war CMHC housing stock. They are all considered grade 2 properties in the HCD, and they are typical of properties in the Panhandle characterized by green front lawns, simple side yards, and other landscape elements like the low stone walls that line the properties. If we go to the next slide, this is a view from just in front of the site on Beechwood Avenue. So Beechwood Avenue is different from any other street in the HCD. It's a main street. And this section in particular serves as a transition point between the more commercial character towards New Edinburgh west of Acacia and the increasingly residential character as you move towards Beechwood Cemetery. So the Rockwood Park HCD is mainly characterized by its park and villa lots with detached buildings set into their park-like setting. But the plan also identifies the multi-unit buildings, the smaller lots and modest houses in the Panhandle as an attribute. And while the plan provides general new construction guidelines, it doesn't provide specific ones for how a new multi-unit building in the Panhandle might be constructed. So if we go to the next slide, I've got the site plan drawings here. So the applicant has submitted these applications in order to demolish the existing buildings on site, consolidate the lots, and build 2 new low-rise apartment buildings. And the HCD plan contemplates the demolition of grade 2 properties, provided that the new construction meets the HCD plan. So a site plan application has been submitted for this project as well concurrently. If we go to the next slide, we've got the elevations of the buildings. So both buildings have been oriented to face Beechwood, The building on the west is proposed to be 3 stories, while the building on the east is to be 4 stories. Each will have a small rooftop amenity space and mechanical room, as well as a sunken basement level where the main entrance of the building will be located, as well as an underground garage. The buildings will be primarily clad in a mix of brick, gray metal paneling and glazing, as well as stone for the basement level. And if we go to the next slide, you can see the buildings have been set into the inclining grade of the site. And the top floors of each building have been slightly set back from the front facade. On the next slide, we've got the landscape plan. So you can see when it comes up, the scale and rectangular massing of the building really results in quite a large footprint, takes up the majority of the consolidated lots. There are also areas of hard surfacing for the driveway and walkways, as well as some terrace areas and retaining walls that are necessary to accommodate the grade. Several mature trees require removal, but new trees and plantings are being proposed, as well as some planting at the roof level. If we go to the next slide. I think this has been quite a challenging file, and in principle, staff are not opposed to a project that would add additional density and units here. The Heritage Planning Branch has approved other multi-unit intensification projects in the Panhandle. These are a couple of examples here on the screen, and certainly across the city as well. In the bottom left, this is in Centertown. And staff have been working with the applicant over the past 2 years in an effort to ensure the proposal could better meet the intent of the HCD plan while providing that additional density. However, there are remaining concerns about the way in which those units are being proposed to be added, which really maxes out the zoning envelope to its fullest extent. The city does have official plan policies, both in the newly adopted OP and existing OP, that speak to achieving intensification goals in HCDs through contextually sensitive infill, provided that it respects and conserves the cultural heritage values and attributes. In staff's opinion, this has not been achieved through these applications, and therefore are recommending refusal of them this morning. If we go to the next slide, in staff's opinion, the main sort of outstanding concerns are fundamental and really intertwine. They relate to the limited soft landscaping provided on the site, which is a direct result of the proposed scale and footprint and arrangement of the mass of the buildings, which in turn also impacts the overall design and expression in terms of its compatibility in the Beechwood streetscape. So a full review against the plan has been provided in the staff report, but in the next couple of slides, I just want to pull out some of the critical guidelines that in staff's opinion have not been satisfied. So if we go to the next slide, in terms of landscape guidelines for new buildings, they really require that landscape attributes of existing lots be respected as part of any new construction. They also require that soft landscaping dominate the property. Properties in the Panhandle aren't necessarily dominated by soft landscaping, but the buildings are located with setbacks to allow some soft areas, generally on all 4 sides, which help provide the narrow sort of gaps between buildings that define the park-like setting of the HCD. So in their current form, the buildings, together with the required driveways and retaining walls that take up much of the lots, leaving very little soft areas of landscaping, particularly in the side yards. Staff are not satisfied that the landscape character of the streetscape will be respected. If we go to the next slide for guidelines for new buildings, there are no grade 1 buildings surrounding the site. However, the guidelines require that height and mass of a new building respect the character of existing buildings in the streetscape. And although the applicant has made efforts to mitigate the height of the proposed building, the arrangement of the mass still remains a concern. The proposed balconies, the alternating brick colors, and some shallow projections are an attempt to break up that overall width. But in staff's opinion, these measures are insufficient to appropriately respect the fine-grained rhythm of the buildings and properties in the Panhandle, which again, typically provide those breaks in the continuous built form. Further, staff Staff are of the opinion that the sunken basement creates a foundation line that doesn't really relate to surrounding properties. The locating the main entrance in the basement is also out of character with typical entrances for surrounding properties, which are usually at or a few steps above grade with a porch. So this, together with the design of the windows and other openings, contribute to more of an office or commercial-like expression of the buildings that doesn't really relate or reference patterns on the north side of Beechwood Avenue. So in these ways, the proposed buildings do not respect the character and have a negative impact on the Beechwood streetscape. If we go to the next slide, staff have also evaluated this proposal against Parks Canada's standards and guidelines. At this time, are not satisfied that the project meets these standards, as the project has not been designed in a way that's compatible with or conserves the cultural heritage value of Rockwood Park. If we go to the next slide, just quickly on consultation, this project has been the subject of several meetings with the Rockwood Park Residents Association through the Heritage Planning Branch's pre-application consultation program, and also through the development review process. And staff have been working closely with our colleagues in planning on this file. The Rockwood Park Residents Association has provided comments on this proposal. Heritage Ottawa was also notified and has provided comments, and neighbors were also circulated, and the chair also provided comments in the staff report. And then just quickly on the next slide, in terms of the urban design review panel, the panel did review this most recently in this past spring, and they did focus specifically on some of the heritage aspects, on the heritage context, recommending improved integration with the HCD. Specifically, they recommended considering increasing side yard setbacks, rethinking that basement level, considering ground-oriented units and improving that pedestrian connection, and also picking up on some of the and reflecting some of the elements seen in the area, like porches and window styles and patterns of openings. So staff agree with these recommendations. However, they were not able to be implemented into this proposal that's before the committee today. And then just quickly to sum up on the last slide, in their current form, staff are of the opinion that the mitigation measures proposed are insufficient as part of the proposal to offset the impacts of these new buildings on the HCD. And in staff's view, the development is inconsistent with the objectives, policies, and guidelines within the Rockwood Park Hcd Plan. And accordingly, staff are recommending refusal of both the applications for demolition and new construction as submitted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mackenzie, for that very in-depth report. We did receive correspondence from the Black Maple Private Co-Tenancy Committee, as well as a resident, and also a letter from Heritage Ottawa. We do have a number of registered speakers. The first set of speakers are from the applicant team, who I understand will be providing a presentation. And we can proceed with elevating members of the team and setting up that presentation.
They're coming online now, Chair. There's quite a few of them, so it might take a minute.
Okay, thank you. And the applicant team can proceed when they're all assembled and ready.
Okay, good morning, Mr. Chair. To start off, I do recognize the time that is preferred to stay within the 5-minute time frame for presentations. With your permission, Mr. Chair, I would ask perhaps for a bit of additional time just to allow both myself and our client's heritage consultant to speak to this in light of staff recommendation.
I'll allow for 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If we could start with the other presentation that was provided, with that up on screen.
Chair, I'm not, if the speaker could please remind me who sent the presentation. I might have missed the second presentation if it's not this one.
There would be one from myself that I sent to the coordinator yesterday afternoon. I will check the timestamp.
I have a chair. If I could have a couple of minutes, please.
Perhaps I can just introduce myself and our team while we wait for the slides. So my name is Kayla Blakely. I'm a planner with Novatech. I'm acting as agent for our clients, Smart Living Properties. I'm joined today by their heritage consultant, John Stewart. I believe the architect, Bob Woodman, is also available. There's representatives from Smart Living here as well in the event there's any questions. Just to introduce Smart Living Properties, they're a local builder in Ottawa. They specialize in quality rental accommodations. They focus their units to prime locations that are walkable, near transit, just to appeal to a wide range of demographics, anywhere from young professionals to small families. So this is their one development proposal that we have been working for quite some time with the city, as Mackenzie noted in her presentation. So with that, I can go through our presentation slides briefly, and then I would turn it over to John Stewart from there.
Excellent. Thank you for the introduction. And I see that the presentation has been put up. So I suppose we can start the literal clock and start the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So we appreciate the presentation from staff, and they recognize a lot of the efforts that have gone into this project over the years. There's been a number of iterations to where we are today, but unfortunately, we cannot agree with the recommendation that is before the subcommittee today, as in our view, it does not have appropriate regard for the distinct character of this transitional area of Rockcliffe Park, nor the function of Beechwood Avenue as a main street. So with that, I will, if we go through the next slide, just to provide brief context, is the subject properties, as staff noted, is within the area known as the Panhandle. In the immediate area, there's quite a number of contemporary builds containing multiple units. There's also older, more modest dwellings that are more typical in form to those found in adjacent neighborhoods of Vanier and New Edinburgh. Outside of the Heritage Conservation District, there becomes a more prominence of street level commercial and mix of uses. Of note is directly opposite to the site is a more recent 10-story mixed use development that is more kind of in keeping with the Main Street character as it's evolving along Beechwood. If we go to the next slide. Just to provide some photos of the area and including a number of the subject properties. They are each individually developed with 2 to 3 story multi-unit dwellings. They're set relatively close to each other and have presence along the street. There's access from Beechwood for surface parking. There's also informal parking provided along Carsdale Avenue, which bisects the 2 sites. If we continue to the next. And this just shows the existing conditions. And the next slide. To briefly touch on the planning framework for these properties. So the properties are all designated as traditional Main Street in the city's official plan. So the objective of the traditional Main Street designation is to encourage more dense and mixed use development. This is along target areas that are that are well served by transit. So redevelopment and intensification is encouraged in building formats that enclose the street to promote a pedestrian-oriented environment. The former village of Rockcliffe Park's secondary plan further envisions that this area adjacent to Beechwood Avenue would redevelop at higher densities. In fact, the secondary plan was amended a number of years ago to remove any residential density restrictions from the multiple family designation that applies on the west side of Beechwood. And that was to reflect the envisioned development that was to occur along here in keeping with the new Beechwood community design plan that was being brought in at the time. If we flip to the next slide, this just indicates there's additional community design plans and urban design guidelines that provide direction for new development along Beechwood, and they're clear in their direction for accommodating intensification. So these policies have guided the design of the development today, and it is clear that the low-rise residential form that is being presented fully aligns with the policy and guideline framework for this area. I would note the design is also informed by the existing R4 zone in terms of use, unit mix, setbacks, parking, and landscape requirements. If we go to the following slide. This is just a rendering to show the proposed development set within the streetscape. So there's been a lot of efforts put into the design to ensure compatibility with the surrounding area known as the Panhandle, which is quite unique in character and which differs significantly from the more spacious estate-like setting found in the interior of Rockcliffe Park. If we go to the next slide. Some of the efforts that have been implemented to ensure a heritage-sensitive design include matters such as maintaining the residential character despite being on a main street, providing that in a low-rise built form that's in keeping with adjacent development, providing for articulation and step back of upper floors as shown. If we skip to the next slide. There's been efforts in terms of landscaping to reinterpret former lot fabric through use of the front gardens. There's, in addition, the landscape concept was designed specifically to carry forward some of the attributes that define these properties currently, in terms of the low stone retaining walls that define the street, the narrow breaks in the streetscape to provide for narrow walkways, single width driveways. In fact, this plan would keep existing accesses virtually in the same location and just maintain single walkways to each building to really emphasize soft landscaping to the front. If we skip to the next slide. There's further consideration for use of natural materials, more residential, refined inset windows with divisions, pulling cues from the neighborhood. There's street level entries that have been introduced in terms of both the garage and the principal entrances to simplify the facade and avoid kind of large vertical projecting elements. If we skip to the next, and we can keep going as I believe staff covered the elevations. And of course, the consideration, one of the important considerations is balancing intensification with heritage conservation. I will let John Stewart speak to more detail in terms of the Heritage District policies, but as mentioned, this area is distinct in character. Beechwood is the only arterial road within the neighborhood, which should be considered in this proposal. And if we go to the next slide. This was just intended to illustrate kind of massing evolution over time, from starting with the as of right massing and how it's been refined working with staff to achieve a more compatible scale by setting back upper floors and articulating the facade. And if we go to the next slide. So to conclude on this, we recognize staff have raised concern with ability to conserve a park-like setting. However, the Panhandle is not characterized by a park-like setting, which can be attributed to buildings set within large landscape lots. In fact, the Panhandle is characterized by buildings which have presence along the street, which have narrow side yards and small gaps between buildings. Properties that have greater lot coverage and more mix of hardscape and softscape. Further, we don't believe that it's appropriate to impose these standards of a dominance of soft landscaping and reduce footprints where they are contrary to the permissions that are set out in the policy framework and in the zoning bylaw, which is specific to these sites along Beechwood. With that, I will turn it to John Stewart.
Good morning, and thanks for the opportunity to speak. This has been an interesting file. I'm with Commonwealth, and we prepared the Cultural Heritage Impact Statement for this project. What I'd like to do today is introduce some information that does not appear in the staff report, and I think it's pertinent to the decision that you're being asked to take today. And when you look at the official plan and the secondary plan, the purpose of the plan and permitted uses, there are lands within Rockcliffe Park designated residential multifamily. There are two areas. They're highlighted in the blue, the two areas, one next to the pond and the one that we're referencing right now. The land's located on the west side of Beechwood Avenue between Oak Hill Road and Acacia Avenue, and also designated residential multifamily, allowing for family dwellings, two-family dwellings, semi-detached duplexes, row houses, apartments, and accessory uses at a residential density shown on Schedule A. Next slide, please. When you, this is a blow up of, on the left-hand side is a blow up of Schedule A, and these dark, the dark blocks along Beechwood are in fact on the, and the legend of the Schedule A are described as apartment, allowable apartments. Our site is the two blocks between Carsdale and if you go to the right-hand side, the 5 lots are shown there. Next slide, please. Just following this through, when you look at the Conservation District Plan, the Statement of Cultural Heritage Value and Defining Heritage Attributes includes a statement addressing the Panhandle as a distinct area. The references and the authors recognize this as part of the secondary plan and include a statement for multi-unit buildings, small lots, and more modest houses in the area bounded by Oak Hill to the east, Beechwood to the south. Next slide, please. The existing character, I think you've all heard that there is definitely the Panhandle is different from the rest of Rockcliffe. The area differs considerably from the spacious estate-like character, the balance of Rockcliffe Park. Next slide. In terms of the local context, in terms of intensification, what we have on the left-hand, the image on the left-hand side is the, we've inserted the two buildings. They're the orange brick and mid view set in behind the, so the adjacent buildings are the 6 townhouses on Black Maple Lane. In the background is the 10-story apartment building, which is outside of the district, but as it is in fact within that 30-meter radius next to the district. The official plan policies do not set up specific requirements related to scale or density, but do state that the height, massing, setbacks, and parking areas of any development in this area shall be compatible with the development in the adjacent areas designated residential. This applies to not to the overall village, but just to this area in the Panhandle. And I think this, more than anything, indicates that there has been an effort to integrate with in terms of height, in terms of materials, with other sites. Next slide, please. You saw this earlier, but I think it's an interesting illustration in what the architect is attempting to do. You can see on the left-hand side, the two existing buildings are set in place. The apartment building is no taller. There was an effort taken in with the darker materials to kind of establish that rhythm as you move down the street, along with the driveways and walkways leading up to it, kind of in an attempt to reflect some of the character. Similarly, on the other side, on the right-hand side, the buildings are approximately a story lower than the proposed development. Next slide. In the staff report, it states the applicant's proposal has been evaluated against the Rockwood Park Hcd Plan. And although the plan identifies the Panhandle area and its multi-unit buildings, it does not provide specific guidelines on new multi-unit development. In fact, the OP policies, although they don't specify requirements relating to scale and density, they do state that the height, massing, setback, and parking areas of any development in this area shall be compatible with development in the adjacent areas designated residential. Next slide, please. Staff report also states that the applicant's proposal has been evaluated against standards 1 and 11 of the standards and guidelines for the conservation of historic places in Canada, and goes on to state concerns raised with the proposed massing, compatibility with the Beechwood streetscape, lot and development pattern, and the ability to conserve the important park-like setting through soft landscape on the lots. I question whether or not the park-like setting ever existed in the Panhandle. And I further question the use of standards and guidelines. They're intended to conserve and not introduce features. Specifically, Standard 11, conserve the heritage value and character defining elements when creating any new additions. I don't think that we can consider some of the features within Rockcliffe Park as in such a broad brush manner in terms of the Panhandle. Final slide, please. Can I have the finals? Oh, thank you. There. It seems that staff report does not take into account the chain of policies from the official plan, secondary plan, and the conservation district plan, and the traditional Main Street zoning that should be guiding this proposal. What we are seeing is a rather broad brush approach being applied to a unique bit of the landscape within the larger Rockcliffe Park environment. And taking in these considerations, I'd ask the committee to consider approval of the development plan. Thank you very much.
I'd like to really thank the applicant team for their presentation. Does the committee have any questions for the applicant team? And I see that Member Hassel has raised her hand.
Thank you, Chair. This question may be best for Kayla, perhaps. But we've seen a lot of discussion in the staff report and again today in your presentation and in the city staff presentation concerning setbacks. and the maintenance of green space and greenery. And regardless of whether you're characterizing, a park-like setting, it's hard to dispute the fact that the current properties do have fairly significant setbacks and quite a bit of greenery. UDRP also recommended setbacks increased to the east and west. So I just wanted to understand what impact that would have on the current proposed development and where the challenge is in respecting that.
Yes, thank you for the question, and through you, Mr. Chair. I would respond that the intent was to maintain similar characteristics in terms of setbacks as exists. So that would be pretty generous front yard setbacks to allow for that landscaping. There's also quite a wide boulevard that adds to the kind of dominance in the front. Similar with respect to the exterior setbacks that are those that abut Carsdale. Setbacks are quite minimal, but in terms of the existing conditions, the development will actually slightly improve on those setbacks. And again, just tying into the existing landscaping that's within the city right of way. In terms of the kind of the interior yards as they abut to the east and the west. So they're providing the 1.5 meter setback, and that's as prescribed in the zone and is quite typical for residential development. Part of the challenge for the site is that the setbacks are specific to these properties, and that there's a site-specific exception that sets out setbacks from Beechwood, from Carsdale, from the rear. And further, there's additional constraints in terms of a required mix of units. So the applicant was required to provide a certain proportion of larger units. So that made it more difficult to cut back massing, considering that I guess it could result in loss of quite a substantial amount of units when there's, I guess, no potential to perhaps just have a more dominance of studio or one bedroom. So despite that, they did work to set back the upper floors. There's also, or from the sides is quite substantial, I think in the order of 3 meters that was intended to kind of transition to the neighboring properties. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. And I see that member Podolsky has also raised his hand.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair King. This is a question not to the proponents, consultants, but to Mackenzie, the staff planner. Mackenzie, would you be able to answer 2 questions at this point?
I can, if that's appropriate, through the chair.
Yeah, I'll permit that if it's focused on the presentation. And so
yes, it's just for clarification, Chair. Question has to do with setbacks. Does the proposal actually conform to the R4 zoning bylaw with all of the exceptions in it? Or is there the need for committee of adjustment variances or rezoning as well? That's my first question, just for clarity.
Thank you for the question, and through you, Chair. So the site does have site-specific zoning, so it has an exception. At the applicant, I think, has worked to ensure that there are no variances that are necessary. Now, I think John Bernier is the planner on the file. He can clarify a bit further. I think there may be a somewhat technical variance required that has to do with the definition of the front yard, but it doesn't impact from a heritage perspective.
Okay, thank you. And my second question for clarity, in the staff report, it suggested that the Urban Design Review Panel had made a number of recommendations, and because the proponent did not adopt those recommendations, staff is recommending refusal. had the proponent amended the design to incorporate the urban design review panel recommendations, is it likely that the staff report would have recommended approval of this proposal?
Thank you for the question. And through you, Chair, I think the panel made some really excellent recommendations. I think they are very much in line with the comments that staff have consistently been providing back to the applicant. So I think if some of those recommendations have been implemented, certainly we would need to look at the new proposal once those have been made. And I think where I was going in my presentation is that it wouldn't be just one change. I think it's a combination of changes that would help bring this proposal in line with the Hcd plan.
Thank you very much, Mackenzie. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Podolsky. Are there any other questions? And seeing no hands raised from committee members, I'd like to thank the applicants for their delegation. The next registered speaker on our list is David Fleming from Heritage Ottawa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Heritage Ottawa supports the staff recommendation to refuse the application for demolition and new construction for these properties. Despite its location on what is considered a traditional main street, these properties continue to be part of the panhandle of the Rockcliffe Park Heritage Conservation District and are subject to the objectives and policies contained in the district plan. Among these objectives are the need to preserve the park and villa and picturesque requirements and to better conform with the existing neighborhood within the Heritage Conservation District. We feel that this proposal is inconsistent with the character defining attributes of the HCD and does not contain sufficient mitigation measures to deal with requirements for joining of lots, height and massing of new development, and the need to conserve the character defining landscape of the district. A modern development that could meet the city's intensification policy and the requirements of the proponent might be achieved by giving better attention to the Hcd plan and some of the constructive UDRP recommendations relating to this proposal. Nevertheless, we urge the subcommittee to support the staff recommendation for refusal for this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fleming, for that intervention. Does committee have any questions for this delegate? Seeing none, thank you so much for your intervention. And the last set of speakers who are registered are from the Rockcliffe Park Residents Association. And I think I saw Michelle Heyman on the call.
Yes, thank you. My name is Michelle Heyman, and I represent the Rockcliffe Park Residents Association, the Heritage Committee in particular. I do have a question about I believe in the applicant's presentation, there was reference made to Sector A, and I believe that comes from Schedule 342. I don't have the means to show you that graphic, but Rockcliffe is specifically outlined as not as being accepted in that particular graph. So any of the wording that applies to intensification for Sector A does not apply to Rockcliffe. I know that one of my colleagues is reading a statement, but I wanted to ask or have someone confirm that indeed Rockcliffe does not fall under Sector A.
And I'll be happy, or I'm sure another member might be happy to relay that question when we have an opportunity to ask questions of staff.
Okay. So my colleague, Marianne Fever, is supposed to be reading a statement. I'm not sure if she is present or not.
And if she has joined the call, I'll ask the coordinator to elevate her so that she can give that statement. She is listed as one of the registered speakers.
Okay. Mr. Pillow, is she present?
I'm not seeing her online, Chair.
Okay.
Okay. Then I will read the statement.
Is it possible that they have signed in under a different name?
I don't believe so. It could be David Esdale, perhaps.
I think she's online then.
Okay, good. Thank you. In the interim, I will mute myself.
Sorry about that. Yes, I'm Marianne Fever, and I'd like to say good morning to everybody, and thanks for this opportunity. As a representative of the Rockwood Park Residents Association, I would like to say that our committee strongly opposes the proposed development. While this proposal for 2 apartment buildings may meet the requirement of the zoning bylaw, it dramatically fails to conform with the legal framework protecting Rockcliffe as a designated heritage district. It conflicts with the provincial policy statement, with the Rockcliffe Park secondary plan, and the Rockcliffe Park Conservation District Plan in myriad ways. Our opposition and the reasons for it have long been shared with the owner and city staff. And so I'll try and summarize briefly. We share the thoughts of the Ottawa Heritage also, and the staff report. The joining of lots, new lots created by joining smaller lots together shall be consistent with the general lot sizes within the associated landscape. The proposal ignores this requirement. Height and mass, new lots created by joining smaller lots together shall be consistent with the general lot sizes within the associated landscape. Doesn't follow that one. Height and mass, multi-unit development is permitted on this part of Beechwood in Rockcliffe Park, but the height and mass, size and scale of development must be compatible with the adjacent residential development on the same side of the street. This is clearly possible, as illustrated by a number of nearby multi-development properties, but in contrast, the proposed development is dramatically out of scale and dwarfs adjacent residential properties. At conservation of the defining landscape character of Rockcliffe Park, new development is conditional on the conservation of existing landscape features, including trees and open spaces, and the dominance of soft landscape over hard landscape as an essential heritage attribute of the HCD, and shall be retained. We feel that this is totally ignored. And the demolition will be permitted only where the proposed building is sympathetic to the traditional surrounding natural and cultural environment. The proposal fails this test also. So the Rockcliffe Park Heritage and Secondary Plan explicitly govern the whole of Rockcliffe Park, including the Panhandle, which includes the stretch of Beechwood. The fact that Beechwood Avenue is at the edge of the conservation district does not alter this basic fact. We acknowledge that the applicant have made various iterations, but we consider they're still way off base, and we would seriously like to see many changes to this proposal before we could recommend it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your delegation. Are there any questions from the committee for the representatives of Rockcliffe Park Residents Association? Seeing none, thank you so much for your delegation. Do any of the members have any comments or any questions for staff on this file? And I see that Jen has raised her hand.
Just a few little ones. Looking again at the softscaping, just trying to see if there's any opportunities here. From a tree conservation standpoint, I know the report indicates there's some concern that replacement planting is constrained by a lack of soil volumes. I was wondering if city staff could just comment on whether there is the opportunity to perhaps improve some of the softscaping with additional trees, or otherwise increase perennial plantings.
Thank you for the question, and through you, Chair. I think it's a good question. I think the landscape plan, there's certainly room for further refinement. I think we would need to be working closely with the applicant with respect to the soil volumes if this were to go forward.
Thank you. And I don't know if you can comment on this discrepancy, but the submitted landscape plan doesn't seem to match the renders. The landscape plan shows a dominance of perennials, whereas the renders show essentially grassed areas with perennial borders. Which is accurate?
Thank you. Maybe the applicant could speak a bit more to this, but I think it could be partly to be able to show the buildings as opposed to having all of the landscaping in front.
Thank you. I don't know, Chair, if it's possible to just have the applicant respond to that.
Yeah, I'll permit that if they're still on the call and can be promoted.
Chair, I'm promoting Kayla Blakely. I'm not sure if maybe they can advise on who might be the best person to answer.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I could probably speak to that. It is the intent that the landscape concept feature more ground cover, planting beds, and rather than sod, just to kind of emphasize the garden-like character. So I think as Mackenzie kind of suggested, in terms of some of the renderings, it could have been to not screen the building, just to see the architecture, but it would be the landscape plan that it does intend to show just more plantings and ground cover. And similar to, as Mackenzie suggested, there's certainly opportunity to work through these details. The application is also subject to site plan approval, so there's I think still routes we can explore in terms of the landscaping and even urban design and streetscape.
And sorry, just to add, the renderings are usually quite illustrative as well. So I think we would rely on the landscaping plan as part of any approval.
Perfect. Thanks, Mackenzie. I had one final question for you. For Mackenzie, that is.
Please go ahead.
Through you, Chair. There are a number of items in the report that suggest that there could be further improvements, fairly substantial improvements to this application. Mackenzie, are you and your team confident that you could work with the applicant to see more of these changes made if more time was given?
Through you, Chair, thanks for the question. I think certainly staff are open to exploring different versions, different iterations, further changes to this project. I think we have sort of spent quite a bit of time already going back and forth, and I think we're sort of at an impasse basically, but and I think we would need to see some substantial changes, but like I say, we are open to further exploring different options with the applicant.
Thank you, Mackenzie.
And thank you. Are there any other questions from committee? Seeing none, I just wanted to relay that question from the Rockcliffe Park Residents Association to staff, I guess, concerning Rockcliffe Park's status in reference to Sector A for Schedule 342. So I don't know if Mackenzie, you can speak to that. It seemed very technical. And that's why, obviously, I'll pose it to yourself or maybe potentially to John.
Thank you, Chair. It is a bit technical. If it would be appropriate, I would like to check that and have it just check with the planner as well offline, and maybe we can circle back with Michelle from the RPRA after the meeting, if that's appropriate. That's definitely acceptable, since it's very detailed and technical. Thank you. So do any of the members have any comments on this item? And I see that Member Podolsky has raised his hand.
Yes, thank you, Chair King. On Sunday, I went for a walk in the whole Panhandle area to examine the conditions of the site in detail. And also, I've had a familiarity with the former village of Rockcliffe Park, having been the consultant along with Boyd Phillips that updated the official plan of the village of Rockcliffe in 1993. So my history goes back quite a ways in the planning and heritage conservation in Rockcliffe. Having said that, I think that what we are facing here today is the unfortunate circumstance of a conflict of direction from the under the Heritage Act and the Planning Act. This happens from time to time in the city of Ottawa, and it's obviously facing us today with how we recommend this file to City Council. Essentially, the proponents, consultants are quite right, and Mackenzie is quite right in her presentation, that the direction that is given by the official plan, the zoning bylaw, and the Beechwood Avenue Community Design Plan all lead towards intensification and Main Street infill along the Beechwood Avenue corridor. I just want to make a second point, and that is that in the Rockcliffe Park Heritage Conservation District study that was done by Julian Smith, in the entire report, there was only one line that relates to the Panhandle area. And the same thing is true in the, the Heritage Conservation District Plan. There's one reference to the Panhandle area. And what this shows is that the anomaly of the Panhandle, which is basically, between Beechwood and Oak Hill and Acacia, it's a unique area. And in particular, the properties, all the properties facing Beechwood are a distinct part of the Panhandle that are unlike anything else in Rockcliffe that creates its heritage character. So we have in front of us two quite valid arguments about why the proposal should be approved or not approved by City Council. Having said that, I think that it is certainly conceded that there have been no specific urban design guidelines that have been defined for the purpose of dealing with all the properties along Beechwood Avenue in the R4 zone. This is an oversight that has allowed a certain amount of drifting and uncertainty as to what is appropriate in this area. And I just want to say that I'm going to support the staff recommendation to refuse the application, but I'm going to strongly recommend that if it is also approved by council refusal, that staff immediately work with the Rockcliffe Park Community Association and with the developers and property owners along Beechwood Avenue to come up with some very clear guidelines for the whole of the strip along Beechwood in the traditional Main Street area. And that way, not just this property can be appropriately developed to complement the Rockcliffe Park Heritage Conservation District, but the adjacent properties to the west and the east as well. So having said that, Chair King, I'm interested to know what my colleagues on the committee believe as well with respect to this proposal. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Member Podolsky. And I see that Leslie has raised her hand in response.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to comment on a couple of small points from Mr. Podolsky's comments. The first is that there is no amendment process under the Ontario Heritage Act for the HCD plan. So while we recognize that there are no specific guidelines for Beechwood Avenue or policy framework within the HCD plan, in order to amend it, we would have to repeal the bylaw, passing a new bylaw, and go through the whole appeal process and everything all over again. And within the work plan of the Heritage Planning Branch and the various plans and studies that we have on our work plan right now, I don't see that being something that we could accommodate within the next, in a short period of time. In addition, and perhaps Christine Enta from legal may have further comments on this, I think it's important to remember that this is an application under the Ontario Heritage Act. So while the Planning Act is not irrelevant here, the decision that's being asked for by the committee is under the Heritage Act as it relates to the HCD, as opposed to under the Planning Act for zoning or official plan amendment or something similar.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that intervention for the clarification of the legislative restrictions and potentially challenges. I think notwithstanding the fact that we might not be able to do something legislatively, it does make sense to have continued conversations with the community as to the implementation of these policies and these plans. And I know that that goes on an ongoing basis. So I do appreciate that. I see no other hands raised, but I did have some comments. And as we've seen here, Heritage staff are of the opinion that the proposed development does not meet the intent of Rockcliffe Park's HCD plan and has not demonstrated how it would conserve the district's cultural heritage attributes. The applicant revised the proposal during the site plan review, but Heritage staff still have significant concerns with the design's massing and feel. The design remains inconsistent with the plan and incompatible with the Beechwood streetscape. Staff are also unsatisfied with efforts to conserve the important park-like setting through soft landscaping, noting that the two large rectangular building footprints leave very limited area for soft landscaping, particularly in the side yards. Despite the concerns noted, the applicant has decided to proceed with the application as presented. In my estimation, as ward councillor, this is disappointing since the Rockcliffe Park Heritage Conservation District plan provides guidance to ensure change within the district conserves and enhances the qualities that contribute to the district's cultural heritage value, for instance, protecting its park-like landscapes. Safeguarding the Heritage Conservation District can only be achieved by approving proposed built forms that accommodate the historic urban design fabric of the street, which, if appropriately planned, can concurrently allow for proper densification while protecting heritage. In this specific case, the development needs a better tie-in with the neighborhood streetscape and needs to afford breathing room on either side of the proposed buildings. A balance needs to be struck between mass and scale, transition within the urban design fabric of the streetscape, along with the landscape features which are protected by the plan. And I noted those in my comments. And I do believe that this application falls far short from achieving this balance. As a consequence, as ward councillor, I'll be supporting the staff recommendation to refuse the applications for demolition and new construction. Is the report carried?
Carried.
Carried. Thank you so much. This report will be submitted to Planning Committee on August 25th, 2022. The next item before us is 4.5, designation of York Street Public School, 310 York Street in Glebe Collegiate Institute, 212 Glebe Avenue, under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. I believe that there is a technical motion that's been anticipated to add ward councillor comments. And I'm pleased that Councillor Moffat can step in for Vice Chair Quinn, who's away, to introduce this motion.
Thank you. So be it resolved that comments by the ward councillor section of the report be replaced with the following content. Councillor Sean Menard has provided the following comment. Glebe Collegiate Institute is an important heritage structure in the Glebe. The building, its function, and its history have contributed and continue to contribute to the nature and character of the neighborhood. GCI is valued by residents, and the community will be glad that it receives this important designation. I'm happy to support the recommendation. Councillor Matthew Fleury has provided the following comments. One of the many things I love about the neighborhoods I represent is that they are full of rich history, much preserved in the historic homes and buildings that remain standing after all these years. York Street Public School is just this, a piece of history that has continued to open its doors to education since 1922, serving generations of children from Lower Town East and other surrounding areas, including our 26th Governor General Adrian Clarkson. This school reflects the ever-growing societal and demographic changes of Lower Town since the early 20th century. For any former student lucky to walk through its doors, many will agree the school's character and charm are unlike any other. This year, as many may know, will mark its 100th anniversary. With this exceptional accomplishment to add to those efforts, with community partners such as Lower Town Community Association and the OCDSB's support, the school receiving official heritage designation this fall is perfectly in time for the school's anniversary celebrations.
And thank you so much for introducing that motion. We typically have a staff report, so maybe Councillor Fleury can hold tight for the staff report, and then we will permit some comments after that.
Okay, good morning, Chair and members of the Bhsc. So today I'm presenting on the designations of two Ottawa schools, York Street Public School and Glebe Collegiate Institute, both under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. So next slide, please. So just to give some legislative context, designations under the Ontario Heritage Act are assessed against Regulation 906. This is a regulation under the Ontario Heritage Act that establishes three criteria. So design or physical value, historical or associative value, and contextual value to determine overall heritage value. If a property meets one of these criteria, it can be designated. So staff has assessed both of these properties against the criteria set out in the regulation and will speak to each in this presentation. Next slide, please. So here's just a quick overall look within the city where these are located. So York Street Public School is up in the top right corner there, located in Lower Town, and Glebe Collegiate Institute is located towards the bottom of that map within the Glebe. So next slide, please. So I'll start with a look at York Street Public Schools. So here's a closer look at the site. It's located at the corner of York Street and Beausoleil Drive in Lower Town, and the images on the right show a variety of views from around the property. So you can see the different facades and the way that the site occupies the corner of Beausoleil. You get a pretty good view of everything around it. And next slide, please. So just some quick facts about the property. So it was constructed between 1921 and 1922 and opened in September 1922. So as Councillor Fleury's comments mentioned, the 100th anniversary of this school is approaching in September. Its architect was William Cavan Beatty, who designed the building in the Collegiate Gothic style. And next slide, please. So now we'll take a look at the criteria for York Street Public Schools. So the first criteria is design or physical value. So the property has design value as a representative example of the Collegiate Gothic architectural style. This style was popular in the early to mid 20th century, particularly for institutional buildings. So you'll recognize some common features with many university buildings, other schools, etc. Some features on York Street Public School that reflect this style are its long symmetrical massing, the monochromatic brick cladding, and its decorative use of stone elements throughout, including the entrances with stone frontispieces with Gothic detailing. So you can see there, the left-hand image is the front entrance and some of that detailing throughout the property. So next slide, please. So York Street Public School meets the historical and associative value criterion for its associations with the ongoing delivery of English language education in Lowertown beginning in 1922. So it's served generations of children from Lowertown East and other surrounding areas. The demographics of the school have reflected the societal changes and demographic shifts that have taken place in this area since the early 20th century, including the Second World War and its wake, and the post-war urban renewal that really characterized Lowertown afterwards. York Street Public School also has historical value as a representative work of notable Ottawa architect William Cavan Beattie, who served as the superintendent of buildings for the Ottawa Public School Board from 1919 to 1924, and was notable for his commissions throughout Ottawa afterwards. His best known work is likely St. Patrick's College, which is now part of Immaculata High School, another building designed in the Collegiate Gothic style. And next slide, please. So finally, contextual value. So York Street Public School meets the criterion for contextual value because it is a landmark in Lowertown East due to its distinct architectural style, its prominent corner location on Beausoleil and York Street with significant setbacks, and its longstanding use as an elementary school. It has further contextual value because it contributes to and supports the mixed character nature of Lowertown East. So this slide actually highlights some of the changes in Lowertown's built form over the 20th century, but York Street Public School has remained a constant both in its setting and its architectural character. And next slide, please. So now we're going to take a look at Glebe Collegiate. So this property occupies a city block size lot bound by Bronson Avenue, Glebe Avenue, Percy Street, and First Avenue within the Glebe. So on the right hand there, you can see some additional views of the property. So the front entrance from both sides, and then also sort of a view from just east of Bronson Avenue towards the rear of the school. And next slide, please. So again, just some quick facts about the building. It was constructed between 1921 and 1923, but did open in September 1922, a few months before the building was fully complete. So we're actually approaching the 100th anniversary of this school opening as well in September. This property was designed by architect John Albert Ewart, also in the Collegiate Gothic style. And next slide, please. So the school has design value as, again, a representative example of Collegiate Gothic architecture. Features exemplary of this style include its red brick cladding and stone foundation, as well as the stone detailing throughout. This is particularly notable in the primary entrance facing Percy Street, which is shown on the left, which features a pedimented entrance with an archway, a transom, wood doors, and buttressed square pillars on the sides, topped with a relief of the school's original crest. So you can sort of see in the left-hand side there, there's actually an oil lamp right in the middle. Another notable feature that really exemplifies this style is the turret that's adjacent to the front entrance. You can see in the central picture there, and that features a crenellated parapet as well. The image on the right just shows a few of the secondary entrances throughout the building, which also further refer back to that primary entrance and exemplify the Collegiate Gothic style. And next slide, please. So this property has historical and associative value as Ottawa's second high school, and its direct associations with the development of the public school system in Ottawa in the early 20th century. So at the time, Ottawa was really rapidly urbanizing, and there was an act from the federal government called the Adolescent School Attendance Act of 1919 that increased the age of compulsory education to 16, and therefore greatly increased the number of students and the need for educational facilities in Ottawa at the time. This school was actually constructed in response to this demand as a secondary campus to the Ottawa Collegiate Institute, which is now Lisgar Collegiate Institute downtown, and later became a separate institution in 1931. The school also contributes to an understanding of the development of the Glebe neighborhood. Historically, it was the primary option for secondary education in the Glebe and other urban neighborhoods like Old Ottawa South and Old Ottawa East, and also has a longstanding use as a community multi-use space outside of school hours. It also has historical value as a representative work of Ottawa architect J.A. Ewart. Ewart's best known other works include Southminster United Church in Old Ottawa South, as well as the transportation building at Rideau and Sussex. And slide 13, please. Finally, Glebe Collegiate Institute meets the criterion for contextual value as it's a landmark within the Glebe, given its distinct style, its large size, which occupies an entire city block, and its continued use as both a secondary school and its community space. It has further contextual value because it contributes to and supports the historic character of the Glebe neighborhood. And next slide, please. So just a quick slide on consultation. So the ward councilors are aware of this report and its recommendations. The Lower Town Community Association as well is aware of the proposed designation of York Street Public School. The Glebe Community Association is also aware of the proposed designation of Glebe Collegiate Institute, and the Ottawa Carleton District School Board is aware of this report and both its recommendations. And next slide, please. So finally, these are just our staff recommendations. So first, to issue a notice of intention to designate York Street Public School at 310 York Street under Part 4, and second, to issue a notice of intention to designate 212 Glebe Avenue, so Glebe Collegiate Institute under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. And next slide, please. So that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions or anything else. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Greg, for that very in-depth presentation. We did receive correspondence from Heritage Ottawa, the Lower Town Community Resource Center, as well as the Lower Town Community Association, all in support. We do have one registered speaker, and that is David Fleming from Heritage Ottawa. So if he can be promoted, if he's still on the call, we would entertain his intervention.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I don't really have anything to add to that excellent presentation. We strongly support this, and we support the initiative of city staff in trying to look at our schools to recognize the significance of them. And we think this is a very good proactive move on the part of the city, and we support it wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate your comments. Any questions for David? Seeing none, we do have time now for questions of staff and for comments. And I do see the award counselors here. And the first hand that was raised was Councillor Fleury.
Thank you, Chair. And yes, I was a little early on the hand raising. I apologize. I'm quite excited about this report. I want to begin, obviously this property is owned by the OCDSB, and I wonder, Eric, if you could just amend my comments. I think there was an extra C that was added in that acronym in my comments, so I apologize for that. So I do want to thank Mike Carson and the entire team at the OCDSB, for their care of historic urban properties and their importance of continuing in their role of education. And I also want to thank Lyra Evans, who's the school board trustee in the area, whom I've worked closely with over the last term, but specifically on this application. So if it passes committee and ultimately council, I'll be glad to host an event at the school for the 100th year of education at York Street in Lower Town. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you for those comments. Councillor Menard.
Thanks very much, Chair. Similarly, just want to thank staff for being proactive about this file. I was at actually both files. I was actually the school board trustee last, 4 years ago, or 8 years ago when I started that, and for both schools because of the overlap with York PS and Glebe Collegiate. Both fantastic, amazing institutions we need to keep going with actively staffed by the OCDSB. And the Glebe Collegiate 100-year anniversary is actually scheduled for this year. So for folks that are interested either on this call or watching, if you can go to glebe100.ca, and that's going to be the weekend of October 14th to 16th in 2022. So celebrating that 100-year anniversary as well. And we're really excited to have a lot of students and faculty come back, staff come back for that amazing event that's being organized at the school. So thank you again to city staff, and really appreciate all the work that's gone into this.
I'd also like to echo that, seeing no other hands raised. I can understand the excitement of both counselors here with their respective schools and their respective wards. I think both buildings have design value that really do are wonderful representations of the collegiate Gothic architectural style, and have historical value for their associations with local architects and the growth and development of their respective neighborhoods. I know their excitement because many moons ago, before I was in elected office, one of the things I was most proud of as being a president of a community association was also being able to get designation of Overbrook Public School on its 100th anniversary. So I understand the excitement, and I share it. And I thank staff and the community for all their hard work on this file. Is the motion carried?
Yes, absolutely.
And is the report, thank you. And is the report carried?
Carried.
Carried.
Thank you. This report will be submitted to City Council on August 31st, 2022. Our final file is concerning an application to alter 15 Linden Terrace. Can staff please provide an overview of this report?
Thank you, Chair. I'll just wait for the slides to come up. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Eric. And thank you, Chair. So yes, this is an application that relates to the property at 15 Linden Terrace in the Clemo Malklin driveway and Linden Terrace Heritage Conservation District. It's the city's newest HCD, passed in 2020. If we can go to the next slide, the property is located sort of mid-block between the Queen Elizabeth driveway and O'Connor Street, on the north side of Linden Terrace, across from Patterson Creek Park. If we go to the next slide, get a view of the property. So the property contains a 2.5-story red brick house constructed circa 1913. It features a stone foundation, bay windows, a gambrel roof with double chimneys, and a prominent front porch and dormer at the 3rd floor. This is a contributing property in the HCD. If we go to the next slide, so this property was purchased by the current owners back in 2020, and they've undertaken some work to the exterior of the house since moving in, unfortunately without a heritage permit. So that includes some replacement windows last year, and then also some repair and alterations to the cladding on the side facades in the 3rd floor, as well as the 3rd floor dormer, the soffits and fascia, and some corresponding work, all of which is currently underway. So this is a bit of an enforcement file, and this application is before the committee today, as it came to staff's attention mid-July that this work was occurring on site without a heritage permit, and the owners are requesting permission to proceed with the work that is currently underway, as well as some remaining alterations that are to be undertaken. So if we go to the next slide, so these are some images of just one side, the east side of the house. So the new owners were working on addressing some previously failed repairs to the previous stucco and faux half timbering, as well as some water infiltration issues that had been occurring. They also had a desire to add some new insulation. So the stucco and the half timbering, that has been removed throughout the house. New insulation's been added, and new PVC horizontal cladding is being added on both the east and west sides of the house. If we go to the next slide, the application also seeks approval for new metal soffits and fascia, which replace the previous wood elements, and also new metal eaves troughs to replace the existing aluminum ones. So if we go to the next slide, in terms of the HCD plan, the plan encourages the retention of original material and that repairs be made before considering replacement. When replacement is necessary, it should be like for like and sympathetic to the existing buildings. In those cases, the plan does contemplate the use of modern materials if they can appropriately replicate the appearance of the original, and if they're compatible with the building's character and streetscape. And it does place an emphasis on conserving the primary front-facing facade. So, you know, these enforcement situations, I think, are always incredibly complicated, and no two are alike. And staff have to consider, I think, all of the factors, I think, in recommending any kind of appropriate action. So in this case, the owners have indicated that they were unaware of the requirements of the HCD plan when they purchased the property, which would have happened right around the time of the designation bylaw. And they didn't receive any letters advising of the designation. The original material here has already been removed and new materials purchased by the owners. Awareness, I would say, of an HCD and its requirements would not typically be a factor that staff consider in cases where someone has done work without a permit. But I think in this case, as a brand new district, it coming into force during the pandemic, together with, I think, the timing of the bylaw and when they purchased, staff are of the opinion that this is a unique situation. So if we go to the next slide, we have been working with the owners. They are now aware of the permit process and have a better understanding of the intent of the HCD and the plan, and have agreed to focus their repair and restoration efforts on the front facade. So this includes revising their previous plans to use the PVC cladding for the front dormer and instead reinstate its appearance using composite stucco and trim. And that's part of this application and at their expense. So the owners have also agreed to reinstate the appearance of the windows that were removed last year, and have agreed to continue to work with staff on an approach for some necessary upcoming restoration work on the front facade, which is anticipated likely next year. So while the cladding and metal soffits don't fully meet the HCD guidelines, once completed, the work will allow for a uniform appearance around the house. As viewed from the street, the alterations will be subtle and not detract from the cultural heritage value of the building or the contribution it makes to the HCD. And as the owners are taking steps towards compliance, overall, the work will address previous issues and allow for the building's long-term conservation. So staff have no objections to that work proceeding. Included as part of this application, there are a couple of other minor alterations that are listed in the recommendation related to some work at the roof level, some ice jams, installation, and new garage doors, and staff have no concerns with these alterations. If we go to the next slide, just quickly, staff have regard for Parks Canada's standards and guidelines when reviewing applications to alter, and staff are satisfied that with this revised approach, the owners are making the standards will be met. If we go to the next slide, this application has followed our standard consultation practices. Staff have also briefed the chairs of the Glebe Community Association on this file, and I think their comments have also been provided to the committee. And then just quickly to summarize on the last slide here, in consideration of all the factors and the steps being taken towards compliance with the HCD plan, staff have no objection to the approval of this application. Overall, the work will ensure the continued use and conservation of the house into the future, which meets the objectives of the plan. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that in-depth presentation. We did receive a number of letters in terms of correspondence on this file, mostly in support. We do have a number of registered speakers, or two or three registered speakers, the first being David Fleming from Heritage Ottawa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be very brief. Heritage Ottawa supports the detailed staff recommendation to alter this Part 5 designated property. It is a good example of excellent, albeit late, consultation between the owner and the Heritage Planning section. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those comments. I don't see any raised hands. So our next registered speakers are Michael and Michelle Powell. And I see that Michael's hand is raised. I think you just need to unmute if you've been promoted.
There we go.
Excellent.
Okay. Hi, thank you for this opportunity. You know, we've been working closely with McKinsey, so I don't really have very much to say. We're just trying to meet her recommendations and rely on her. So thank you.
Well, we appreciate your cooperation, and we understand the scenario as described by staff. I mean, it's a new HCD. You want to work in compliance with staff to enhance the beauty of and the aesthetic of your property, as well as maintain your property. So we're very much appreciative as members of this committee, and that you're doing that. And I know that staff is pleased to be working with you. So thank you so much for
thank you.
Absolutely. Does the committee have any questions for staff? Seeing no hands, are there general comments on this item? And I don't see any, so is the report carried?
Carried.
Thank you so much. I think that concludes the applications, and now we just have a few other items. There are no in-camera items, but there is potentially a notice of motion from Member Podolsky.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just in terms of getting guidance from you on procedures here, I'd like to table this notice of motion relating to the potential designation of the former CPR rail bridge over the Rideau River under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Is it appropriate that I read this notice of motion?
Yes, please enter it into the record, and then we will consider it at our next meeting.
Thank you very much. Whereas the recent City of Ottawa Infrastructure Services staff reports and memos recommend the demolition and replacement of the former CPR rail bridge constructed in 1898 over the Rideau River at the Herdman Junction next to the Queensway Bridge. Whereas a 2018 engineering consultants condition assessments and options analysis report on the former CPR rail bridge includes option number 1, rehabilitation, as a viable option if more expensive alternative, but more expensive than the alternative to option number 2, which is replacement. And whereas the infrastructure services staff report recommending option 2, replacement, is based on the assumption that the CPR rail bridge is of no heritage value and that the cost of replacement is lesser than rehabilitation. And whereas the CPR rail bridge is likely to be found to have significant heritage value when its design, historic, and contextual attributes are evaluated in accordance with the Ontario Heritage Act Regulation 0906. Whereas the City of Ottawa Heritage staff have prepared a memo indicating that a cultural heritage evaluation report must be undertaken in any case to comply with the environmental assessment process. Therefore, be it resolved that the Built Heritage Subcommittee direct staff to undertake an evaluation of the heritage value of the former CPR rail bridge for possible designation under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. And 2, to submit a report on the heritage evaluation with recommendations on the proposed designation to the Built Heritage Subcommittee and City Council before the end of the first quarter of 2023, essentially during the new council, and to consider the stabilization works recommended in the 2018 engineering consultants condition assessment and option analysis report to prevent additional deterioration of the bridge in the event that staff recommend a notice of intention to designate the property, and that the bridge be added to the heritage watch list. This is the motion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we will be considering that notice of motion at our next meeting. The next item is inquiries. There are none to date. And other business. Is there any other business? Seeing none. On adjournment, is the motion carried?
Carried.
Carried.
We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody. The next regular meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, September 13th, 2022. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.